AskReddit. Teachers of Reddit, what are your the parent is just as bad as the student's stories? High school teacher, and we have something called soft lockdowns, known as shelter in place by some schools, where doors are shut and locked, but classes continue as normal. These are pretty common, and can be used for anything from a medical emergency, want everyone out of the hallway, if someone needs to be cared for, because high school is a nosy, to a fugitive running around the neighborhood. We've been in many soft lockdowns, because parents have come to the school ready to hunt down and beat the crap out of a teacher. They usually come in the front office, can't access the rest of the school without someone opening the secured door, screaming, cussing, threatening everyone in the area. You get the picture. Often, they're removed by the SRO and given a criminal trespass citation. We have a pretty high rate of fights and violence between students. When I see parents acting this way, it all makes sense. I once had a student who thought I should drop whatever I was doing and help him immediately anytime he asked a question. One time, I was working with another student and this kid yells across the room that he needed help. I told him I would help him when I was done and to please raise his hand next time. Apparently, this set the kid off because he went on a loud tirade about how I was racist for not helping him. Never mind the fact that the student I was helping, who he wanted me to abandon, was the same color as him. I ended up kicking him out of class after he went on and on about it for a while, which he said only confirmed my racism. Everyone else in the room just kind of stared at him as he left. He got suspended from my class for a couple days, which meant I needed to inform his family. I never actually spoke to his mother because his aunt was listed as a contact about any incidents. Turns out he and his mother were living with the aunt at the time. But the aunt explained to me that he had learned this behavior from his mother, who demonstrated this behavior anytime she felt she was wronged. The aunt said she was trying to fix her nephew's attitude and promised me that it didn't matter if her sister thought it was fine to teach her son to act that way because it wasn't going to happen again while they lived in her house. And you know, she was successful. The kid never pulled that crap again, at least not in my classroom. I'm not a teacher, but I taught for a freshman chemistry class last year, so college kids, but ones that were in high school like 3 or 4 months previously. One kid in my section was amazing, scary smart, always got great marks on assignments, asked fantastically phrased questions that the professor loved to answer, was a joy to be around during the lab section, because he was so easy to be friendly with. He clearly loved and excelled at the work and enjoyed being in the environment, which definitely extended to the rest of his lab group. They were consistently the most talkative but also got the highest marks on assignments. About halfway through the semester we introduce a concept that he struggled with a bit, so he came to a few tutoring sessions, and he was a joy to help one-on-one. Our third tutoring session was in the campus Starbucks and went late, so he had to get his dad to pick him up because his ride to campus that day had already left. His dad came a bit early, so he ordered a drink and sat down with us for a bit, and I immediately understood where this kid got everything from. His dad was wicked smart, asked relevant questions in a way that made me think about the material in serious depth same way that his son did, cracked a couple of dad jokes that made me laugh, and was beyond easy to talk to the point where we had stayed an extra 30 minutes beyond what we were supposed to, swapping between going over the material and cutting up. Just a joy to be around from day one until the day of the final, and the apple clearly didn't fall far from the tree. This one's sad. I was a camp counselor, and I had a girl in my cabin with issues. She was attention seeking, kind of a mean girl, and generally wasn't liked by a lot of the camp. I honestly didn't give her a lot of one-on-one attention, which is something I deeply regret in retrospect. I only understood the issue because I was bus staff. This was a sleepover camp. Her session was 2 weeks and her parents had elected for her to take the bus back and they'd pick her up. The bus was early, but plenty of parents showed up early. They were so excited to see their kids. As we got closer to pickup time, the crowd dwindled until there were just a few left. A staff member asked for the kids still there so they could make phone calls. All but one were in traffic and on their way. My campus parents said no. They said they had 2 more days of freedom. They wouldn't take her and said we needed to put up with her for a couple more days. They each said this individually and hung up. Neither responded to follow-up calls. Staff told me to go home, and they were left to figure that one out. My parents always hated me, but this was shocking to me. That someone's parents would absolutely refuse to let their 12-year-old into their house. Elementary teacher here. We had a student who wouldn't stop stealing things out of other kids' backpacks. We had caught him on camera and would call the parents and they would just say no, that's his insert stolen item. We just bought it for him. Then, we get him on a positive behavior plan and create intentional lessons about empathy to others, setting goals to get what you want, the difference between wants/needs, etc. Eventually, he gets enough positive days in a row that he gets released from the behavior plan and receives a free bike as his incentive for good behavior. They were donated to the school by a local bike shop. The next day he tells me his uncle stole it and pawned it. He went right back to his old behaviors, and it was heartbreaking. I had a student last year who was new to the school. Really nice, friendly, shy and hilariously absent-minded. He would come to school at least 2 days a week with either his shirt on backwards, inside out, or both. So I wanted to talk to his parents about how his absent-mindedness was affecting his learning. Mom shows up at 5. Dad shows up 1 hour late. We have a good chat and they get up to go. As I'm walking them out, I said, I will show you the shortest way to the parking lot. The dad replies with, I didn't park in the parking lot. So I said, you can go the same point way to the street. He said I couldn't find the parking entrance. So I just drove around and parked on asphalt play area. Sure enough, I walk by and his car is next to the playground. So it all came together after that. I had a preschooler call his mother an a-hole. This would be upsetting, except the day before, she called him an a-hole. She said it quiet enough that other children or people wouldn't hear, but my coworker swore she heard her say it. We have our scheduled conference and she doesn't understand why he says such nasty things to her. Teaching adjacent. I used to be an educational facilitator at a science center. During the school year I would be the liaison for school trips. During the summer, I would run the summer camps. Parents used to like to plunk their kids in science camp because it is educational. We had a pile of hands-on programming. I have to say, it was pretty fun. Fun unless your kid aggressively hates science and you are forcing them to be there. Enter Jason. Jason was a poop on day 1. We welcomed them to camp by making liquid nitrogen ice cream. Jason didn't give a crap. He refused to eat stupid nerd ice cream. Through the day his attitude got worse. He refused to participate, called the other kids nerds and losers. He was an all-around pain in the ass. At pickup, I pulled his mother aside and said, I don't think Jason really wants to be here. We can arrange for a refund or see if we can transfer him to another program he will find more to his liking. His mother replied, it's your job to make him want to be here. Clearly you suck at it. Great. Day 2. Jason shows up with an even bigger chip on his shoulder. The day's activity was engineering. Fort building. Every kid loves a good fort. Except Jason. Jason picked up one of the plastic tubes and cracked a kid across the back of the leg with it. As I run over to tend to his victim, Jason cracks me across the side of the head with the tube with all his might, breaking my glasses and giving me a decent bruise across the side of the face. It takes 2 of us to disarm Jason and separate him from the group. We pull him into the admin office and call his parents to come now. He is no longer welcome. His mother shows up a good 3 hours later, absolutely livid. Not about Jason's behavior. Not in the least. There was no apology or understanding. Instead, as we ejected her son from camp, she turned to us and said, I hope you all get cancer. The mother, who was screaming in the office, I'm gonna hit you in your effing face, because a tutor dared to say the kid was having behavior issues during free tutoring. Now I know why the 5 of your 11 kids in our school are terrible hot messes. Poor things don't have much of a change. Mom was banned from the building because this was the last straw. I had a student who repeatedly lied about assignments, saying he turned them in and his teachers had lost them. As a team with admin present, we conferenced with mom and dad, who deflected and provided excuses that he just doesn't like school, and if my son says he did something, he did it. We value integrity in our family. 3 months later, some friends of mine invited me to a bar a few towns away to see a band perform. Near the end of the night, I ran into the mom, who is out on a date with a man who isn't her husband. From that point on, she wouldn't return any of my emails or calls about the son's behavior. She is now an administrator in another county. I got a phone call from a parent basically saying that a few other children had beaten up their child, so the following day we take aside that child, then all the other children. In the end turns out there were 9 other children involved, and it turns out to be the complete truth. The children had been arguing about a video game, they're 10, and this one child had a different opinion to the others, so they push him to the ground, and while he's curled up on the floor, they start kicking him. My head teacher contacts the parents of the children involved to let them know and explain the punishment. Fast forward to the next day when one of the parents comes into school and starts shouting at their child in front of his whole class and teacher, asking him why the hell he admitted to doing it, what was the matter with him, and how he was stupid for doing so, before taking him and his 2 siblings out of the school. This child was one of the ones who admitted straight away to doing it, and had burst straight into tears, and was clearly feeling guilty. When I was still a student teacher, I was asked by my cooperating teacher to sit in on parent-teacher interviews. The first parent scheduled for that night was the parent of a student who was completely tuned out in my class, usually always sleeping, never does any work, never did well on tests or assignments, the usual suspects. The student was also often caught on his phone in class watching streams on Twitch with the volume on, and complaining when his phone would get confiscated. My cooperating teacher tells this parent all of our concerns in the nicest and most polite way possible, going as far as beginning to suggest homework management solutions, study tips, and even formulate a plan of action for the student so that his grades could improve come next term. Now, if I asked you to go and look up the definition of disconnected in the dictionary, you would find a picture of this woman. Everything my cooperating teacher said, all her concerns, her suggestions, her plans of action for this student, went in one ear and straight out the other. When the teacher finished voicing her concerns/suggestions, I kid you not, this woman blinks, like one of those I have no idea what you just said kind of blinks, pauses for about 5 whole seconds, then replies with, "How many students are in this class?" My eyes immediately bulged out of my head at that response. This wasn't a classroom size problem. This was a your child puts in zero effort problem. Still, the teacher politely replies with 26, relatively small for a school of more than 1,700 students. The woman stood up from her seat so violently that the teacher flinched and proceeded to storm out of the room mumbling, "Too many. Class is too big. Too many kids. Too many." My cooperating teacher and I were both speechless. It turns out that she went straight to the principal's office right after the interview and began to complain to her about the class size and how it was hurting her son's education. When the principal said that there wasn't much she could do about the situation, the parent began to complain about how I, the student teacher, obviously didn't know what I was doing for her kid to be failing, and that the student teacher should teach the class alone. Thankfully the principal backed me up, but I still couldn't believe what an airhead this parent was.